For years, Wolfgang Van Halen lived in the shadow of a legend, his father, Eddie Van Halen, one of the greatest guitarists to ever live. To many, he was just the son of a rock god. But what happened next stunned everyone. Once dismissed by critics as a nepo baby, Wolfgang has silenced them all, carving out his own identity, one song at a time. From the toddler who sat behind his Uncle Alex's drum kit to a Grammy-nominated artist leading his own band, his transformation has become one of the most inspiring stories in modern rock. This is the story of how Wolfgang Van Halen stepped out from behind his father's shadow and took the world by storm. His musical talent emerged at a young age. Wolfgang Van Halen was born in 1991, the only child of guitar legend Eddie Van Halen and One Day at a Time star Valerie Bertinelli. Growing up surrounded by fame and music, he faced the challenge of stepping out of his father's immense shadow and succeeded. Today, he's carved his own path in rock as the frontman and creative force behind his band, Mammoth WVH. Wolfgang has never hidden how deeply his father shaped his journey. "He's the reason I do what I do," he told Odyssey Check-In. "I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him. Just doing what I do now feels like the best tribute I can give." Raised in a home filled with instruments, it was only natural that Wolfgang showed musical talent early on. In a throwback Instagram post, he shared a childhood photo of himself behind his uncle Alex Van Halen's drum kit, joking, "Sneaking in a quick jam sesh on Uncle Al's kit with my drumming Uggs and sticks almost as big as me." As he grew older, he gravitated toward the drums. Eddie taught him the basics, then encouraged him to find his own rhythm. In an interview with the Washington Post, Wolfgang recalled how his father stacked magazines on a table and said, "If you can keep time on this, you can play the drums." By age 9, he had graduated to a real drum set, and Eddie couldn't have been prouder. Wolfgang Van Halen didn't know his dad was famous until he saw his face on a CD cover. Wolfgang Van Halen often says that his grounded upbringing was thanks to his parents, Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli. Despite growing up with two famous parents, his early years were surprisingly normal. "My mom did a really good job of keeping me grounded," he told People. "It felt completely normal, not lavish or insane." As a child, Wolfgang had no idea his dad was one of the most iconic guitarists in the world. In an interview with Guitar World, he admitted, "Not really. I didn't notice until I started picking up CDs and saw his picture on them." The first time he realized something was different came after a family trip, when paparazzi surrounded them at LAX. "I just remember all the flashing lights," he said. "That was the first time I noticed people treated my parents differently." He finally learned the truth around age 6 or 7, when his father was remastering Van Halen's early albums. "I found a box of them and saw my dad's picture. And my name," he told Ultimate Classic Rock. I asked him, "Dad, what's this?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this is what I do." And that's when he really introduced me to everything. The inspiring reason he taught himself to play guitar. From an early age, Wolfgang Van Halen was obsessed with drums, but as he reached his teens, his curiosity shifted toward the guitar. With Eddie Van Halen as his father, most would assume he had the perfect teacher. But that wasn't exactly the case. "My dad wasn't the best teacher," Wolfgang joked to Louder Sound. "I'd ask him to show me something and he'd just start being Eddie Van Halen. Then he'd say, 'Do that,' and I'd be like, 'Yeah, sure, no problem.'" Instead, Wolfgang chose to teach himself. Much like his dad, who had been self-taught, he wanted to find his own voice on the instrument. "It was important for me to develop my own skills and sound," he told Spin. "Otherwise, I'd just sound like a bad Van Halen cover band." There was one exception, though, when he decided to learn 316, the instrumental piece his father had written for him as a baby. Eddie helped him master it, and Wolfgang proudly performed it at his 6th grade talent show. That was the one song he actually taught me all the way through, he said, a rare father-son lesson that meant more than either could have imagined. He joined Van Halen as a teenager, but had to prove himself to fans. By 2006, Wolfgang Van Halen's talent had grown so much that his father invited him to join Van Halen as the new bassist, replacing original member Michael Anthony. He was only 15. To outsiders, it looked like pure nepotism, but Eddie Van Halen insisted it wasn't. In an interview with Guitar World, he explained that his brother Alex had heard Wolfgang playing through headphones and was stunned, not realizing it was his teenage nephew on bass. When Eddie asked Wolfgang to join the band, the young musician agreed, joking, "Sure, as long as I don't have to do a bass solo." The move drew backlash from longtime fans, many of whom accused Wolfgang of being a nepo baby. "It was tough," he told Louder Sound. "I didn't know how to handle that kind of hate. It really did a lot of damage to me." Still, he silenced critics during Van Halen's 2007 to 2008 reunion tour with David Lee Roth, proving he was more than worthy of the name. Wolfgang Van Halen joined another band, Tremonti. By 2013, Wolfgang Van Halen was already a seasoned member of Van Halen, having toured the world with the band his father founded long before he was born. That year, he surprised fans by joining the hard rock group Tremonti. Speaking to Billboard, he made it clear he was fully committed to both projects. "Van Halen is the priority," he said, "but when they're not active, I treat Tremonti as a real band I'm part of." His role with Tremonti came about naturally. Wolfgang had been friends with guitarist Mark Tremonti for years, and when the band suddenly needed a bassist before a tour, he stepped in. "I went over one night at midnight, learned the whole set, and the next day we were on the road," he told Rock Street Journal. He grieved the loss of his famous father. In 2001, Eddie Van Halen revealed he was battling tongue cancer. After treatment, he was declared cancer-free the following year. But the disease returned, and in 2020, he passed away at age 65. For Wolfgang Van Halen, the loss was devastating. "It's really tough. Some days are better than others," he told Carson Daly on Today. Grieving, he said, was something he was still learning to live with. "The pain never really goes away. You just figure out how to carry it better." To the world, Eddie was a rock legend. To Wolfgang, he was simply his dad, loving, supportive, and his best friend. In an interview with People, he shared that his father's spirit continues to motivate him. "What keeps me going is my dad. If I gave up, I know he'd be really pissed at me. He's the reason I keep moving forward." Wolfgang Van Halen's debut album was years in the making. When he wasn't touring with Van Halen or Tremonti, Wolfgang Van Halen was quietly building something of his own, what would become his 2021 debut album, Mammoth WVH. The project took years to complete, with Wolfgang playing every instrument and writing every song himself. "It's 100% me, playing everything, writing everything," he told NPR. "It's more pressure, but also more creatively freeing." He joked that the only downside was having no one else to blame if things went wrong. At first, he hadn't even planned to make an album. Inspired by Dave Grohl's one-man approach on the first Foo Fighters record, Wolfgang began recording just to see if he could pull it off. "I wasn't sure I could do it," he admitted. A year after the album's release, he reflected on how much it meant to him, writing on X. "It was the culmination of years of work, trial and error, loss, self-doubt, and anxiety. It started a new chapter in my life, one I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I jumped in anyway." He became frontman in his own rock band. After releasing his debut album, Wolfgang Van Halen knew the next step was taking his music on the road. To do that, he assembled a band and named it Mammoth, a tribute to the three-piece group his father led before forming Van Halen. "I always loved that name," he told NPR. "I promised myself that one day I'd use it for my own band." Recording an album was one thing, fronting his own rock band was another. While he was used to playing bass on tour, being the lead singer was new territory. On the Walking the Floor with Chris Shiflett podcast, Wolfgang explained that he had no intention of being a flashy frontman like David Lee Roth. "I'm just being myself," he said. "Maybe it's not the most exciting thing, but being honest feels right." He received a Grammy nomination. Wolfgang Van Halen's debut album earned him his first Grammy nomination, a nod for Best Rock Song with his single Distance. Though he didn't take home the award, being nominated alongside icons like Paul McCartney, Kings of Leon, Weezer, and Foo Fighters was a milestone in itself. He marked the occasion with a heartfelt Instagram post featuring his mother, Valerie Bertinelli, and girlfriend, Andrea Alsop. "We came, we saw, but we did not conquer. And that's okay," he wrote. "It's such an honor to be nominated for the first song I ever released on my own, alongside artists I've admired all my life." He even noted that his father hadn't won a Grammy on his first nomination either, a connection that made the moment even more meaningful. Speaking with Noise 11, Wolfgang said the recognition alone felt like victory. "To be treated as an equal in a category about songwriting, that was enough of a win for me. To be nominated next to the people I grew up idolizing, it's an unbelievable honor." Wolfgang Van Halen married his longtime girlfriend in 2023. When Wolfgang Van Halen appeared at the 2022 Grammy Awards with his longtime girlfriend, photographer Andrea Alsop, the couple had already been together for several years. They first connected online and went on their first date on October 15, 2015. Exactly 8 years later, on the same date in 2023, they were married in an intimate ceremony at their Los Angeles home, surrounded by about 90 close friends and family. "We wanted it to be a celebration not just of our marriage, but of the people we love," Andrea told People. In a touching tribute to his late father, Wolfgang chose to have 316, the instrumental Eddie Van Halen wrote for him, playing as they walked down the aisle. "It was a special way to include my dad," he said. His mother, Valerie Bertinelli, couldn't have been happier. "They really get each other," she shared. "They have the same sense of humor, respect each other's space, and are just so comfortable together." He performed at the Oscars with Ryan Gosling and Slash. By the time Wolfgang Van Halen released his debut album, toured with Guns N' Roses, and earned a Grammy nomination, his career was already gaining serious momentum. Then came another unexpected milestone, contributing guitar to Barbie, 2023's biggest movie. He played on Ryan Gosling's show-stopping number I'm Just Ken, performing alongside Guns N' Roses legend Slash. The two reunited on stage at the 2024 Oscars to back up Gosling's viral performance, giving Wolfgang the biggest audience of his career. "It was crazy but really exciting," he told The Morning Call. "That's not my usual environment, so I definitely felt like a fish out of water." Though he sensed Barbie would be a hit, he never expected it to become one of the top-grossing films of all time. "To have even a small part in something like that was amazing," he said. "I loved playing on it and being part of that moment." He's come to terms with the understanding that he'll always be compared to his dad. In August 2023, shortly after the release of Barbie, Wolfgang Van Halen dropped his second album, Mammoth 2. Just like his debut, he wrote and played every instrument himself. A true one-man band. Throughout the process, he tried to strike a delicate balance, honoring his legendary father while still defining his own musical identity. Following Eddie Van Halen's advice, Wolfgang made it a point to carve his own path. "I'm gonna be myself whether or not anybody has a problem with it," he told Guitar.com. He knows comparisons to his dad will always exist, but he's encouraged to see that more fans now recognize him for his own music. "It's starting to happen," he said. "People say, 'I didn't even know you were Eddie Van Halen's son.' That's the best compliment, because being a fan of my dad doesn't automatically make you a fan of me. It's really flattering when people see me as my own person. From living in his father's shadow to standing tall as one of rock's most exciting modern talents, Wolfgang Van Halen's journey is nothing short of inspiring. He's proven that talent, hard work, and authenticity can silence even the harshest critics. And that legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. What do you think has been Wolfgang's most impressive transformation? His music, his confidence, or his independence from his father's legacy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories about Wolfgang Van Halen and the incredible world of rock music.